Imagine being born into a life where money is never a question, where opportunities appear before you even realize how rare they are, where your last name already carries weight, history, and expectation. Now imagine the opposite, building everything from nothing, working every single day, knowing that one mistake could erase it all, and still hoping that somehow, what you build will outlive you. That single difference, what gets passed down, is what changed the richest families forever. But here's the real question: is generational wealth a gift, a burden, or a responsibility that quietly follows every decision, every choice, every success? To understand that, we have to go back in time. For most of human history, wealth didn't last. It was fragile, temporary, like sand slipping through fingers. One war, one drought, one political upheaval, and fortunes disappeared overnight. Rich families rose quickly, only to fall just as fast. There was no safety net, no long-term planning, no such thing as wealth that truly lasted beyond a single lifetime. Then, slowly, things began to change. Land became ownership instead of mere survival. Businesses became systems instead of side projects. Money stopped being just currency and started becoming power, a power that could endure. Families realized something revolutionary. Wealth didn't have to end with one lifetime. It could be designed to continue. And that realization changed everything. The moment families began thinking beyond themselves, wealth stopped being about success. It became about legacy. Not just how much you make, not just how you live, but how your children, and their children, live because of you. And legacy changes the way people think. When you believe your children and grandchildren will inherit the results of your choices, your thinking changes. You stop chasing quick wins. You become patient, strategic, protective. You stop thinking in months or years, and start thinking in decades, even centuries. That's how dynasties are built. The richest families didn't just pass down money, they passed down the advantage. It shapes industries, it funds ideas, it influences education, politics, and culture. That's when wealth stops being personal and becomes societal. But generational wealth isn't always the dream people imagine, because when wealth lasts long enough, it starts shaping people too. Some heirs grow up with freedom, others grow up with pressure. Imagine being born into expectations you never chose. Imagine being told, silently or openly, "Don't ruin this," before you even know who you are. For many heirs, wealth doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a responsibility they never asked for. That pressure breaks families more often than people realize, and that's why so many fortunes disappear. There's an old pattern that repeats across history. The first generation builds wealth. They struggle, they sacrifice, they risk everything. The second generation protects it. They maintain what was built, they refine it, they stabilize it. The third generation grows up distant from the struggle. They inherit comfort, but they forget the memory of sacrifice. Without memory, respect fades. This isn't about laziness, it's about distance. The farther someone is from the struggle, the harder it is to understand its value. That's why so many wealthy families collapse from within. Money doesn't disappear because of bad luck, it disappears because of bad preparation. The smartest wealthy families understood this early. They didn't just leave money behind. They left stories. Stories of risk, stories of near failure, stories of moments when everything almost fell apart. Because money without context creates entitlement. Money with history creates respect. Another major shift that changed wealthy families forever was structure. Early on, families realized that splitting wealth evenly, again and again, weakened it. So they created systems to protect it. Trusts, foundations, family offices, agreements that limited access but preserved power. This wasn't always fair, but it was effective. Wealth became centralized, controlled, and strategic. Decisions stopped being emotional and started being intentional, and with structure came longevity. But structure alone wasn't enough. Because wealth isn't just numbers on paper, it's relationships, it's communication, it's trust. Families that avoided hard conversations eventually paid the price. For decades, many wealthy families believed secrecy was protection. Children weren't told how much existed or how it worked. The idea was to keep them humble. Instead, secrecy created confusion, resentment, and reckless behavior. Modern wealthy families learned the hard way: education beats secrecy. Teaching children how money works, why it exists, and what it's meant for creates responsibility instead of entitlement. That's why many long-lasting wealthy families don't focus on money in their family meetings. They focus on identity, on responsibility, on contribution, because wealth without purpose eventually destroys itself. And then there's the question of responsibility. When wealth lasts long enough, it affects more than one family. It affects communities, economies, entire systems. Some families use their wealth to build hospitals, universities, and innovations that changed the world. Others used it to protect their own power, influence rules, and silence competition. Same wealth, very different impact. So the real difference wasn't money, it was my intention. That leads to a powerful question. What is wealth actually for? Comfort, security, control, contribution. The families that survived across generations answered that question clearly and early. They understood something simple but powerful. Money doesn't build legacy. People do. Values do. Education does. Purpose does. And here's the part most people miss. You don't need millions to create generational wealth. Because generational wealth isn't only financial. It's emotional stability. It's financial literacy. It's confidence. It's teaching your children how to think, not just how to earn. Some families with modest income build lasting stability for generations. Others with massive fortunes lose everything within decades. Because money doesn't multiply itself. Mindset does. Understanding generational wealth isn't about resentment or comparison. It's about awareness. Because once you understand how wealth lasts, you can apply the same principles, no matter where you start. You may not pass down estates or businesses, but you can pass down discipline, curiosity, resilience, vision. And those things compound faster than money ever could. The richest families weren't special because they had wealth. They became different because they learned how to carry it forward. They learned that wealth without wisdom disappears. But wisdom without wealth can still build a future. And maybe the most important lesson of all is this. Wealth that truly lasts isn't counted in dollars. It's measured in preparation, purpose, and the ability to carry forward what matters. Because what lasts isn't the mansion, it isn't the business, it isn't even the money. It's the way a family thinks, acts, and survives across generations. And that's the power of generational wealth. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.